I'm more than a bird. I'm more than a plane. I'm more than some silly face beside the train. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies with special guest Tim Davis. This is the podcast where all three of us went and saw a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater. And now we're going to talk about it in the parking structure right next to the movie theater. In Matt's on the Pilot, we're going to talk about such things as, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you bring your family to this movie? Should you bring a date? Should you go by yourself? Should you snack? Should you nap? Should you craft? Should you pay attention completely because it's a twisty-turny thriller? I don't know. We're going to talk about such things, some things, all things, or none things. You know, we're going to try our best. I am Todd Domer.
I'm Matt Malloy. Yes, we will talk about some of that at least. And, we saw a movie. This movie is called Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve Story. So this is a documentary, but there are quite a few actually famous people in it. Tim, who is in it that we might know?
Well, obviously, the subject of the matter, Christopher Reeve, and his family are a big part of this. Christopher Reeve, of course, most famous for playing Superman over the years, and then all his efforts to bring eyes to his research on his injury and all that he did in his post-acting career. And then we have he had a lot of celebrity friends and people he met over the years that talk about in this movie. Besides obviously his family members, you have Susan Sarandon, we have clips of Robin Williams, we have clips from Richard Donner, the director of the first movie, and just a lot of celebrities that he knew, and also politicians. John Kerry's in this as a friend of his, and just a real good portrait of all the people he met over the years.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different than most movies we see. This is a documentary style, and it's really stitched together the experiences of Christopher Reeve's life, and from growing up, a little bit of growing up, but mostly focused on the time where he was in Superman, and then the time after he was injured, and just kind of like what his life was like after he became paralyzed in an accident, and what that was like for his family as well. Like Tim said, family figures in heavily to this, as well as anecdotes from other actors and such, and a lot of shots and video of Christopher Reeve himself, both before and after his accident. So yeah, that's kind of what it's about. There's no plot per se. It does sort of chronologically examine his life before, after, and then after he dies, what happens to various people in his life. So so that's what it's about. Todd, what are your super thoughts on Superman?
Ooh. Well, I feel like I have to put out some disclaimers first. There was no way I wasn't going to enjoy myself watching this, because I am a huge Superman fan in general, and I am a huge original Superman movies fan, and Christopher Reeve is definitely my Superman.
I think he's a lot of people's Superman.
Yeah, so like there was not an avenue that I wasn't going to enjoy myself. And then there's a lot. I knew tonight was going to be like a heavy night. Like there's a lot going on with my dad right now, and like that's like tied up in like my feelings about Superman and the fact that like I can remember watching the original movies with him. So I was like, this is going to be a heavy night. Yeah. But outside of like the good that I want to say, I do like want to stay impartial and stuff like that. I don't think this is the strongest documentary I've ever seen. And I felt at times they had a hard time really finding their narrative, because it changed a lot. And I know that they were trying to do like, well, of course, it changed a lot because his life changed a lot. But there were times where I felt like this doc could have been much shorter. It really felt like they were harping on the same tones a lot, and they would just revisit stuff. And there was, I thought, I just didn't like the entire marble sculpture cutaway thing that happened throughout the entire doc, and it happened a lot, and it was like, it just was trying to throw this kind of like doc movie artsy kind of thing in there. You know, of course, when we're talking about his back injury, the kryptonite's growing out of the sculpture's back and stuff like that, I thought that was a little over the top. Like, I thought, and I do think the story itself is a strong story, and I don't think it needed something like that. But outside of that, I thought it really hit a lot of like tones that I thought is a good thing to hit for a doc like this. You know, talking about the person, showing their life, and the difference between something like this and like Amy Winehouse movie or something like that is that there's no fantasy involved here. Like, it's just, we're just talking about the stuff. We're showing some character flaws from a person maybe you didn't know, you know, so well. But it was like, and take heed, because this is the second time I'm ever going to curse on the podcast. Who knows if there's going to be more. It was really refreshing to just like know that this guy you've looked up to for most of my life, and the roles and the person and the character, is that he's just a fucking good guy. Like,
yeah,
it was not like, you know, there's some character flaws that they highlight, and they don't try to like pull back from that kind of stuff. Like, they kind of show came from a broken family, maybe even like participated in broken family. His first family broke with his first kind of wife, and it was his fault, and him not being able to find his way. But it was just like, it was nice to see a guy who was considered a good guy before tragedy fell on him continue to be a good guy and fight for the good people, and fight for causes that needed to be fighted for, that no one was doing at the time. So that's just nice, and it was like, it gives you the good feelings, and I like seeing a lot of the behind the scenes things, and I like learning the stuff that I did. There wasn't too much talked about in this doc that I already didn't know, but it just was nice to revisit a lot of stuff. And it was really nice to even like, you know, they were building a case, and it you don't have to build a case. It is just fact that Superman the movie started the comic movie everything. Like, I mean, fantasy sci-fi movies, you know, there are movies that really pump the genres to a new level, and really we have to thank today, you know, like Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. Superman is one of those movies, like, and it holds up to this day. And strip everything else of how I feel about this documentary, just seeing clips of the movie, I was like, man, I gotta watch this movie. I gotta go home and watch this movie. So yeah, I mean, like, because I love the subject matter and it's dear to my heart, it's not like this was ever going to get a truly bad rating or anything like that. I think it was a good doc. I just don't think it was fantastic. I don't think it broke the mold for docs. I don't think it did anything in a different way than what's already been presented. But then, you know, part of me is like, well, the purpose of the doc is just get the story across, is to get the information out there. It's never supposed to, maybe it's not supposed to be a 5 all the time. It's just, let's get the information out there. Then do with that information as you wish. So I think it's a good thing to go see this movie. We want docs like this to exist. So I think in ways that you can support it by seeing it in a theater and stuff like that are important. Just straight, like, doc-wise, I think, is this the best doc you're ever going to see? I don't think so. Like, I think, when I think of, like, the best docs I've ever seen, a lot of the 30 for 30s come to my mind. Just being able to tell a story that grabs you, keeps you captivated. You don't feel like you're, revisiting tones throughout the entire thing. And that's why I think docs should be a certain length. I don't think you need an hour and 45-minute doc. There's only so much you can put in there where it doesn't feel like you're just kind of retelling the same story. So some things I would do different, but I thought it told a good story. I thought it tells an important story. There's a Tesla truck. It is so god-awful looking. It's like my eyes want to bleed right now as I see it drive past us. It's so horrible. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say see it. I think there's a purpose in seeing it. There's a purpose in supporting it. So I say see it. If you're a comic book fan, you love the first movie. If you're a disability rights activist, like, I mean, there's a wide array of people I think who can see this doc. So that's gonna be me, Tim.
Yeah, I agree with you, Todd. It's a good movie, and I think it's an important watch. It's not really breaking new ground. It's the celebration of a life that had two purposes basically. At first, he was just a good guy, an actor trying to find his way in Hollywood, and then a tragedy struck, and his whole life changed, and he decided to devote it to making sure that other people in his condition or similar could live a better one, and even if it meant he wouldn't get any better, or he would at least try and hope that everybody could. And I think that's the kind of hope and stuff that the Superman character stands for. And I think that's that was the big theme of this doc, is that what makes Christopher Reeve such a special person is that he was more of a Superman in his real life than even playing the character, as good as he was at playing the character. And that, like, he devoted his life to being a good person, even before the accident, and then after the accident, he even more so wanted to take what happened to him and turn it into a uplifting story instead of a, oh, woe is me, look what happened to me. And I think that is pretty incredible, and that's why he's such a important figure in, I would even say, American history. And then what I also liked about this doc is that they focused on his wife as well, who was a major important. Dana Reeve was just as important in getting the foundation going, being there by his side, being that rock that he needed to stay focused and also live his life, and she lived her life, in support of him. And I thought they did a nice job focusing on her too, and giving her some spotlight as well. It just, like you said, seeing clips of the old movie is great, and he really was Superman in a lot of people's eyes. And like you said, so when the documentary touches on how he became, this guy, he became known for being in a wheelchair. The guy who's Superman, the greatest, most powerful being in, the comic world. And but yet he even was more inspiring that way. And always trying to put a positive spin on it and being the face of disability. And I think that was really what his legacy ends up being, even though those movies are still big hits and looked back upon fondly. I think it's a good documentary to see. Yes, it goes through some of the tropes of these docs, and I thought they had a lot of good footage, actually. A lot of clearly family footage just taped over the years, and interviews with different people from different talk shows where he talked about things. And it was pretty impressive to do a doc where most of the key characters aren't around anymore. And so they had to rely on the family and the friends to kind of tell the story. And I thought they did a decent job with that. So I think it's a good movie to see. Like you said, to support things like this, because they aren't made as much these days, or they're usually on a TV show or a cable, streaming service or something. And obviously they believed enough in this to put it out in theaters. And so, I think it's good. And like I said, you don't have to be a Superman fan to enjoy this. You don't have to even know who Christopher Reeve is. If you're young and grew up and he's not your Superman, because there's been other Supermen since, you can learn about what this guy was and what he meant to a whole generation of people. And just see how important, a legacy you can leave can sometimes be more than the character you played, even if the character you played is a larger-than-life character. Matt?
Yeah, I think that we see a lot of movies that are maybe we're not the target audience for,
mm-hmm.
And I think with this movie we are the target audience.
Yes, that's right.
We're not all the same age, but we all grew up kind
mm-hmm.
of loving those movies, and Christopher Reeve was our Superman, and I can remember when he got hurt and when he was paralyzed. Like, that was such a huge deal for me. I didn't know anything else that he'd ever done in his life other than be Superman.
Right.
But then you hear that he's injured and he might die, and all the things that happened after that.
I was young and I was devastated. What was it? It was 95, right? So I was 11.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember my parents telling me, and I remember being so upset by it. And it was like a wave of first I didn't believe it. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not true. I can only remember there's only so many celebrities that impacted me.
When something happened to him.
Something like that. The other one was big for me when I was of similar around the age was Chris Farley. Like when Chris Farley died, like that was hard for me because he was like Superman was like my comic idol and like my, good values idol. But like Chris Farley was like my idol. Like I was like I could do that in life. This guy gives me hope that I could be doing that. Like.
Yeah. So if that's you, you should definitely see this movie because you guys both touched on it, like seeing the scenes from Superman, seeing some behind the scenes stuff from the making of those movies. It really brought home to me that like that was the first movie where flight was done and done well.
Very well.
It still holds up today.
It looks great.
And all that went into making that happen, and he was part of that. Like they make reference to a particular scene where he's flying and he's really on like pulleys or a crane or something like that, but he banks away from the camera, and then they show it, and it's just like, wow, he made that happen.
He instinctively just knew this
right.
was gonna look.
I thought the one thing that he said that I was like, holy crap, I've never thought of it that way, but you are so right. When he said flying is on the eyes.
Yes.
And then they showed like him doing it, and I was like, holy crap.
The way he had the focus, and then his eyes would turn, and you would believe that he saw something.
I've just never thought of it that way. And it's all right. It doesn't matter what the hand movement was. It doesn't matter anything. It was all in the eyes.
Right. Yep.
And it's like one of the, not the first time, but it's one of the first times that a theater actor like kind of big jump shipped to like, what they would say, like, selling out type of thing.
Yeah, that was a funny little story to hear. William Hurt, who's another famous actor.
Yeah, bring up William Hurt. He can't defend himself.
Yeah.
You can't be like, I don't remember that happening.
The actor at the time said, no, don't sell out and do that big movie. It's not gonna be worth it.
I also love, and they didn't, first time, is Gene Hackman still alive?
Yes, I think he's not in the public eye anymore.
But I really appreciated that they did not mince words about Brando. That it wasn't like, we will not waste our time remembering this guy. Because everyone just remembers Marlon Brando for the great actor he was, whatever, but not the horrible human being he became. Like, just the waste of space, lazy, crappy guy. Like,
well, I love that the quote came from Reeve himself, that he was just kind of like, oh, well, how was it working with him? I don't really know. I didn't have much to
say. And those are great scenes, too, because it really shows that the only reason Superman worked was great direction, great script, and everyone casting. Being all in. Like, everyone being like, and him being like, walking in and being like, I'm going to make you guys believe a man can fly.
Well, and also, like you said, like, and the story's been told before, but like making sure to cast big name actors around him, but do an unknown, because that way the pressure's still there, but it's not as much because, like, he can be Superman and there's no preconceived notions coming in. And I think he was one of the few actors that could have done that, and he obviously did, and that because not everybody could do that.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt.
It's all good. It's all good here. So additionally, I thought that they had really big, important moments from Christopher Reeve's life. When he showed up at the Oscars after being out of the public eye after his accident in a wheelchair, and addressed the crowd, and they show the crowd, and showing up at the Democratic National Convention and similar things, like those are really powerful scenes, and they did a great job of kind of capturing the emotion. I mean, I was crying during.
I agree. Yeah, I remember.
There was not many moments during this whole thing that my eyes weren't watery in some way.
I even remember the Oscars. That, like, as it happened, like I think I was watching that night, and I remember because they did the thing where that no one knew he was going to be there, and then he just showed up, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" And he sounded good. He started with a joke, and you're just like, "Wow!" He's like, he looks great for what happened to him. And like they said in the movie, he did it because they were still that was still the time where disability was kind of, no one wanted to look at it, or they were ashamed to talk about it or to see it, and he wanted to make sure that people say, hey, I'm right here and I want you to see me.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I think those are sort of the highlights of it, is like seeing someone that we cared so much about growing up, and seeing someone learning more about how he played the role, prepared the role, got the role of Superman, and then seeing those big moments are really the kind of the big pluses for this movie. Todd, you mentioned this. I kind of think they lost their way a little bit with their narrative in the middle. It kind of dragged a little bit, and then kind of picked up again when you were abruptly thrust back into, well, he's dying now, and getting that part of the story. And really from then on, I think they finished strong.
They finished very strong.
With a lot of emotion from his kids, and just talking about different things about him dying and his wife dying, and yeah, I think the movie finishes very strong. I will agree with you, Todd. I did not like that marble sculpture of him floating in space. It was
too over the top.
It was weird. It was just a weird thing.
Yeah.
So
it's like I get what they were going for, but they did, like you said, they didn't need it.
It's like, talk about the accident. Oh, here's a crack in the marble's deck. It's like, could you get more cliche? Like,
right, a little too on the nose.
Those are the kind of, like, I think that's what I appreciate about the 30s for 30s, is that they don't go for the bells and whistles like that.
Right.
Like, and I think that's why I think they've become my standard for a doc. Like, not too long. Let's get to the point.
Get in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think, like I said, I have all the elements of the target audience here, and that made it much better for me than I think it would have been if you don't know who Christopher Reeve is going in and you're just learning about his life. You'll probably enjoy it, but it won't be as kind of emotional.
The emotional impact,
heart-wrenching.
Won't be there.
So yeah, I liked.
Well, sweet. Well, how many? I mean, it's just got to be, how many flies around the earth would you give this doc? 0 being the worst, because then there's no resetting time and we're just stuck. And, well, let's be honest, things aren't going very well. 5 being the best, because I guess that's 5 attempts to change the past, and with 5 attempts, maybe we could make a difference. Right. I don't know. Matt.
I'm gonna go with 3 trips around the earth, trying to turn time back. I don't think that's going to be enough to actually turn time back. I think it takes a lot more than that, but worth the try. And I like the movie, so like I said, it has its flaws, but I think overall I had a good experience watching it, and I think a lot of people would. So that's me. 3.
Tim?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a story worth telling, and I do think it will speak to even people who maybe don't know the whole story. I think it's well told enough that they hit the right points, and the emotions are there in the interviews and the footage from Robin Williams and all that. I feel like it's still pretty powerful, so I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that I was more surprised coming out of is seeing a lot of the takeaway of just how adamant he was that, like, well, you think about, like, Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, and now he's going to be Dr. Doom, and how egotistical I think he is, and it's all about, like, I am Iron Man, and, Hemsworth is I am Thor, and stuff like that, and there was just a humbleness that really conveyed in this doc that I really liked, that it was like absolute rocket to stardom, and maybe enjoying time with the ladies a little too much, but otherwise it was like, this is a part I'm playing. Like, I appreciate that people see me like this, but I'm not going to, like, take that completely on, because that would mean I'm prideful. Is how it all comes across. It's not exactly the words that he uses, but there was just a humility that is just refreshing, that I just don't think you see nowadays much. I mean, I'm sure it's out there. It's just not as, especially in our Hollywood people right now, it's not there, like, at all. So that was just nice, you know, a nice thing to see, nice thing to experience. I'm landing on, like, somewhere in the middle of you guys. Like, I think I landed on a 3.2. You know, it could have been a lot shorter. It could have done without the bells and whistles. You know, if we're just kind of critiquing it as a doc. And also, I have to admit that, like, man, Christopher Reeve might have been the whitest white guy to ever white, because all of his hobbies is like sailing, horseback riding, skiing. I'm like, you might be the whitest white guy. Tennis. I mean, and it's not like,
and I don't think he would. I think
it's not bad, or it's just. I just was laughing at times. Like, every time they shared something he's into, and I'm like,
I think he would admit that.
That's like in the top 5 white guy things to do.
Yeah. He seemed like the type to totally accept that.
And honestly, I think I could have. I mean, I don't think you could tell a whole hour and 45-minute doc, which that's probably good. But I would like a further exploration of his friendship with Robin Williams. Like, that was every time they talked about that. Like, I knew about that, but actually seeing part of it, like, that was just really interesting to me.
Yeah, I thought that was a very good anecdote.
Yeah, like 3.2, I think. And honestly, it was a little haunting when Glenn Close was like, I think if Christopher Reeve didn't die, Robin Williams would still be here. I was like, whoa.
That might be
That's kind of haunting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, 3.2.
Okay. Any last thoughts?
If you haven't seen the original Superman movie,
there's no excuse. Go see it.
Just go see it. Like,
it's a great movie just in general.
Have some fun.
It's a great Superman movie, but it's also just a great movie.
Yeah, they are just good movies. There's a reason why
1 and 2,
40 years later, they are still depending on who you talk to, considered the best not just the best Superman movies, but the best comic book movies. Now, I'm going to say I liked Superman 3, but I understand why people didn't.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this movie admitted he was checked out for it, because we all knew 4 was his passion project that was not a good movie, but 3, I thought he was still on board. I didn't realize that he was already checked out by then.
No, I knew he was out by 3, and I like that they didn't tell the whole story of 4, because it's sad, because, like, he didn't want to do 4, but then they gave him creative control, and he was like, well, I want to tell this huge story about, like, no war, all peace. And then halfway through, like, they pulled his entire budget. So it just, that's sad. But forever, this is what I'll end on. I could go all night, but this is what I'll end on. Forever, I mean, as much as I love Superman 1 and 2, one of my favorite scenes ever is Evil Superman versus Clark Kent. It is something I think about almost on a daily basis as I go through my life, and I'm like, which Todd is going to take over this scenario? Is it going to be bad Todd, or is it going to be Super Todd? I don't know. But, well, okay, I got to tell a funny story too about that scene. So, back in the early days of MySpace and Facebook and stuff like that, like, when you wrote out a bio, right? My bio for the longest time was talking about that scene and how, and then being like, you know, there's a good time, there's a bad time, and every day there's a battle or something like that. And that's just what it was forever. When I first set it up, that's what it was. Never changed it, whatever, don't care. Flash forward some years later, I'm going out for the police academy, and I've passed the test, and now I'm sitting with a background investigator who is doing a search on me and brings up that bio, and he's like, what do you mean there's a good Todd and a bad Todd, and every day's a battle and stuff like that?
So there's a movie.
And I really did have to be like, first I laughed, and he was like, what's funny? And I was like, oh, nothing, I guess. And then I was like, then I had to explain the whole story about how I'm a huge Superman fan. That's from Superman 3. And I was like, and I explained the scene. I'm like, you know the scene I'm talking about, Superman 3. He's like, never seen it. I was like, well, then you're not going to understand what I'm talking about, sir. So, all right, now I'm done.
Yep. On that note.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we review the movie Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve Story. And we all pretty much enjoyed it, and we gave it an average rating of 3.23 repeating spins around the earth out of 5. And
that's at least 3.5 Lois's, or 3 and some change of Lois's we're gonna save.
That's right.
Good.
That's right. We'll save at least part of Lois's life. So we would say go see it, and we would also say thanks for listening, and please continue to listen, subscribe, download our old podcast here, and we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.